Well, good morning, everybody. I wanted to touch base with you regarding assignment number 2, authoring a thesis statement. I got through grading all the papers last night, so you should have the grade in your grade book. So um, the issue that I found most of you had difficulty with is that your thesis statements were too vague, meaning that you didn't get specific enough and as a reader, when I began to read the thesis statement, what I should know when I get done reading it is, what is this paper going to be covering? So let's go through. What I did is I picked out um, three thesis statements that I thought were good in relation to the topics as they were given to you. And I wanted to go through them so that I hope that you would be able to see how and why these were good thesis statements. And as you look at your own thesis statements, how you might improve upon them as you go through. Look at them so that you know when you write a paper at some point in the future, your introductory paragraph should end with your thesis statement that's very specific on how you should begin to put your paper together. So let's look at topic number 1. What is a vocation? The opinion of the author was vocation is a calling. Let's look at the thesis statement. Vocation is a calling from God in which He tells us in 3 various ways on how to live at home, in ministry, and at work. So when I got done reading this particular one, I said, I know what I'm going to expect in the paper when I read it. I'm going to expect a supporting point on God's calling at home. I'm going to expect a supporting point on God's calling in the ministry, and I'm going to expect a supporting point in God's calling at work. So I know there are going to be at least those 3 points covered in this particular paper. Okay, so let's look at topic number 2. Why is it important to know yourself as you contemplate vocational calling? The opinion of this author says, know yourself or else risk your true vocational calling. The thesis on his was, if you do not take the time to understand where your strengths are and what helps you personally to succeed, then you run the risk of not being prepared or even missing out on your vocational calling. Okay, so again, looking at this, I was saying, I know what he's going to be covering in his paper. Number 1, understanding your strengths. Number 2, understand what helps you to succeed. And point number 3, if you don't understand points 1 and 2, you're going to risk the unpreparedness and missing out. So I knew when I got done reading this what the paper was going to cover. So let's look at topic number 3. What role does your relationship with God play in your vocation? The opinion of the author was, your relationship with God helps you to define your vocation. So here's his thesis. Often, a ministry-based vocation involves ministry that revolves around the individual's relationship with God. It is imperative for an individual to acknowledge that God has called them to serve, how they best answer such a call, and what plan of action they can take in order to fill such a vocational ministry. Now that one is a little more complex, but still, by the time I got done reading this, I knew in the end what the author was going to write about. So that's an imperative when you begin to write papers. Later in this class, when you go to your other classes, writing good thesis statements are really going to be important so that your professor knows what you're going to cover in your paper. So for this individual, point number 1 was that he acknowledged God's calling to serve and how that happened for him. Point number 2, how to best answer that calling. And point number 3, what plan of action is needed to fulfill that calling. I knew that those 3 areas were going to be covered in terms of the particular paper. What role does your relationship with God play in your vocation? So for me, I was able to discern that very easily. I didn't have to guess what he was going to cover. It was all there laid out for me. Okay, so I'm hoping that when I said, your your papers were, or your thesis statements were vague. If you go through and you read these, you're able to see the difference between what you wrote and how these other individuals were able to pull together their particular thesis statements and why I thought they were good. I hope that will help you in the future. Thanks and have a great day.